The July 25th, 2011 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Esposito. Here. Mr. Hanna.
Here.
Chairman Holland.
Here.
Mr. Monroe is excused. Mr. McCann.
Here.
Welcome to the Monroe County Planning and Economic Development Committee public hearing to approve and adopt proposed additions to the Monroe County Southwestern Agricultural District Number 2. The public hearing is being held to give the public an opportunity to comment on 1, the proposed additions to the districts, and 2, the recommendations of the Monroe County Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board. I hope you've signed in at the door. If not, please do so before you leave. The July 25th, 2011 public hearing before the Monroe County Planning and Economic Development Committee will come to order. This public hearing is part of the regular Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. Article 25AA of the New York State Agriculture and Markets Law allows the county legislature to create agricultural districts. The law then requires the legislature to review each district 8 years after its creation and every 8 years thereafter to see if it is achieving its intended purpose, which is to help conserve and encourage the use of agricultural land for the production of agricultural products. In 2002 and 2003, the New York State Legislature adopted changes to the Agricultural and Markets Law that enables property owners to petition for adding lands to an established agricultural district at a time designated by the county legislature. Previous to this change, property owners wishing to add lands to an agricultural district had to wait until the established 8-year anniversary date to petition the county legislature for the action. A public hearing must be held prior to the legislature resolving to add parcels to agricultural districts. The purpose of the public hearing is to give the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed additions. Mr. Clerk?
A mailing regarding this public hearing was sent to the supervisor, clerk, and landowners of the affected town and to the Commissioner of Agriculture and Markets on July 15th, 2011. Also, an affidavit of publication and posting of hearing notice in the Daily Record and Rochester Business Journal were posted on July 22nd, 2011, and has been received and is on file in the clerk's office.
Following the public hearing, the Planning and Economic Development Committee will take action and make recommendation to the Monroe County Legislature for action at its next meeting, which is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Tuesday, August 9th, 2011. We will now hear the public comments regarding the proposal additions to 2 agricultural districts from the audience. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the committee on this subject? Seeing none, I'll close the comments. I declare this public hearing closed. As stated previously, the Planning and Economic Development Committee will take action on this matter and it will come before the full legislature at the August 9th, 2011 meeting. Following its adoption, a report and revised district map will be submitted to the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets. Mr. Clerk, is there anyone signed up for the public forum this evening?
There is not.
The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You should have the June 27th, 2011 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. The next item on the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk?
Referral 11-166.
Moved by Legislator Hanna, seconded by Legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? There being none, all those... Oh, I'm sorry. Legislator Esposito.
Thank you very much. If I could ask for clarification on what we're voting on today and how, if at all, it's different from the referral we voted on the last Economic Development Committee meeting.
Through the chair, what you're voting on today is the recommendation to the full legislature for the addition of the 2 parcels. At the previous meeting, which you were voting on, was the start of the process, which has to be authorized by the county legislature. So that starts the 30-day review period. What you're voting on right now is for the recommendation to the full ledge.
Okay. Thank you. I know we've been through this a couple times, but it wasn't clear why we're voting on the same referral twice. If we're going to be voting on this to recommend it to the full legislature, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask some questions, perhaps through you to the administration. Last time we met, we did discuss the contents of this recommendation, and there were a couple questions and requests that I had, one of which was a copy of the report from the county's Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board, which I did receive, and it was a one-page letter, I understand, from the chairman of that board. Is that the extent of the written analysis that's done by the board for this committee before recommending something like this?
Through the chair, that is with the report that's received from the Agriculture and Farmland Protection Board. Obviously, there's additional background work that's done primarily by Dr. King at MCC, who's secretary to the Farmland Protection Board.
I understand. And through you, Mr. Chairman, is there any kind of formal application that the landowner makes?
Through the chair, yes, there is. There's a form that's filled out by the landowner requesting to be added to the agricultural district.
Okay, that's just so we're clear. That's more the information I was looking for last time. The letter was, I appreciated it was followed up in a timely manner, but it didn't say anything related to why this landowner and why the board decided it was something that should be added to the ag district. So, if possible, before the full ledge meeting, when we will be voting on this, assuming it passes out of committee, I'd like to request as much of that information as is appropriate to share with this committee, both from the analysis from Mr. King and also the application and whatever is relevant from the landowner. The other issue I raised at the last committee meeting was the issue of back taxes. I'm not sure if it was both parcels or one of them had some liens against it, and at the time there was going to be some follow-up done on that issue and reported back to this committee. I believe some was done informally, but I didn't receive anything officially in terms of what the status was, so I'd like to ask through you, Mr. Chairman, if there are any back taxes or liens on either of these properties.
Through the chair, Tim Murphy, Director of Real Property. All the delinquent years have been paid. The only taxes owing are the 2011 taxes are still owing.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, do we have expectation that those will be paid? I presume they're overdue at this point as well.
Through the chair, there'd actually, I mean, there's interest owing, but they're not actually fully delinquent yet.
Gotcha. Thank you. So that matter's been resolved to the best of your knowledge on the back taxes and the liens.
Through the chair, yes, it is.
Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up on that. The two parcels identified in this referral, through you, Mr. Chairman, may I ask the administration, are they adjacent to one another?
Through the chair, yes, they are.
Okay.
They're separated by Black Creek, which kind of runs between the border of the two properties.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, is the reason they're separate on this referral because they have two different owners? Is that the only distinction?
Through the chair, they're two separate parcels.
Okay.
And the ownership is the same, but it's through two different companies.
All right. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, last month when we delved into this, we had gotten this, and we knew that there was a golf course or community planned on this facility and that there was a driving range there. And in light of some information we received from them and some press reports this morning, I understand there's also a housing development having been planned and continues to be planned for this parcel. And so I'm trying to understand, and part of my request for the application is why the board is recommending that these parcels be added to an agricultural district if they're primarily intended to be, or at least a great portion of them, to be a housing complex in the future. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, I think I'll ask Dr. Robert King from MCC to respond to that. As Secretary to the Ag and Farmland Protection Board, he's responsible for doing the review to make sure that the properties meet the requirements to be included in the agricultural district. So I'd like to turn that over to Dr. King.
Through the chair, I've had several conversations with the farmers. I've had a farmer, Steve Krenzer, who's leasing both Archer Road and Ballantyne Road, and I've had several conversations with both Bill Howard and representative for Gary Pooler, which is John Shields. There's a 50-acre subdivision that's planned that has been planned for the 257-acre parcel on Archer Road. Agricultural district's designation is for the entire parcel, and the subdivision of that 50 acres has not occurred yet. So it's not uncommon to have a parent parcel that's in an agricultural district and then have the subsequent subdivision parcels also have that ag district designation, but don't meet the definition of agriculture. Hence, they're not afforded that protection. So since 1971, since the creation of the agricultural districts, that's been the philosophy of the county and of the Farmland Protection Board, is that the entire parcel would be included. You can't exclude a portion of the parcel. Hence, that's why that 50-acre subdivision, proposed subdivision, at least as the way I understand it through John Shields, is why it's included in the application.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, if and when that 50-acre subdivision gets developed and sold, am I correct in assuming that those then will become separate individual parcels that are not part of the parent parcel?
Through the chair, that's correct.
And
by the way, the Farmland Protection Board, historically, we've left those parcels continue that ag district designation. So we have a mechanism by which to reach out to those non-farm neighbors so we can get a mailing to them when we have to, because that was the only way, based on the database that the county has, we were able to query it. But we've had some new developments within the use of the GIS system here that we may be able to do it in a different fashion. So we'd like to continue to have that ag district designation to those parcels for those non-farm neighbors for the purpose of communicating.
And if, for purposes of a hypothetical, I were to buy one of those parcels in the future and build a house and I didn't want to be in the ag district, I could petition to be removed from it?
Of course, yeah, absolutely we could. And we've gone to, excuse me, through the chair, we've gone to non-farm neighbors about that, and oftentimes they get it, over time they see that as amenity. They want to be viewed as being supportive of the agricultural district, so often they want to continue that ag district designation even though they're not afforded the rights and privileges, of an agricultural use.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, what is, this is 50 acres out of 257 acres that are planned for a housing subdivision. It's my understanding that the other parcel, 120 acres, 70 acres of it has been leased for farmland activity currently. What is the minimum threshold of farmland activity on a parcel that you would like to see or required to see in order to designate a parcel for an ag district?
Through the chair, during this 30-day annual addition, at least 51% of the parcel has to be in viable agriculture. And that viability doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be actively worked at the time that it's being petitioned to be added. It means that there has to be a plan within, a 12-month or 18-month period to reflect that there's this active activity going on to have that land worked. So it's 51% of the parent parcel size. That acreage also can include the field roads. It can include the woods, because they're also considered as being supportive of the land being in an agricultural use.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And through you, Mr. Chairman, what happens if the golf course development picks back up again and proceeds? Will this then be disqualified from the ag district and removed from it, or will there need to be other formal action for that to happen? To the point where more than 51% of both parcels are now golf course and not ever going to be farmland in the foreseeable future?
Through the chair, both owners have indicated me, Gary Fuller and Bill Howard, that under no certain terms do they plan on developing it for a golf course. Hypothetically speaking, if there was any development that would occur on that parcel and it no longer met the definition of agriculture, it would no longer have any rights, privileges, or protections under agricultural district law. It would no longer be eligible for ag district protection.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I know I've asked this question before, so I apologize, but being in an ag district in of itself does not entitle you to a different property tax assessment of any kind, correct?
That's a great question, and often through the chair, that's a great question. Most people get confused about that. The agricultural districts law is a program in which you're just afforded certain rights and privileges in order to keep your land in an agricultural use. The agricultural value exemption, or ag value assessment, although is located under agricultural district law, is pretty much a separate program. And in the sense that the ground would have to be worked. It's eligible for a reduction in property tax based on its soil type, but the parcel has to be involved in some type of commercial commerce for agriculture and an agricultural use.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In that agricultural land assessment, or whatever the term was that you used, that's a decision that needs to be made by the municipal assessor. Is that correct, or is there a county or state role in that decision?
Agricultural value exemptions are not shall or will, it's eligible for. So ultimately, it's up to the local assessor as to whether or not to grant that exemption.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, does being part of an ag district or not have any type of formal connection with receiving or not receiving an ag assessment?
Through the chair, there are a couple connections with ag value exemption, in that during an 8-year review, if the owner opts out, that there no longer would be subject to what we call a rollback penalty. So it would be 5 years back tax plus the 7%. So that's one of the connections. The intent of that is for the farmer, whoever's working the ground, if they want to get out of farming or they have to get out of farming, they're able to do so with minimal cost. That's about the extent of the connection with the agricultural district as well as ag value exemption.
I'm sorry, can you explain that again, how the rollback would work?
So during what we call an 8-year renewal, through the chair, during an 8-year renewal, which is what we call a full-blown review, is that the landowner could request to have the land removed and stop taking an ag value exemption and would not be subject to any penalty, or what we call a rollback tax. So in other words, once the land starts to get converted, the assessor would wind up, the landowner has to notify the assessor that that development's occurring, and that portion of the parcel that's converted is subject to what we call a look-back or a rollback tax. That it would be basically the difference between its ag property valuation versus its developed use, and that difference times 5 plus 7% would be subject to, quote, a penalty for converting that portion of the parcel.
Thank you.
And I'll defer to the assessor, Mr. Murphy. Did I get that quite right? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So, bottom line, please tell me if I got this right through you, Mr. Chairman. These two parcels are no longer planned to be golf courses, and more than half of each of them are intended, or at least are viable farmland, and that's why they're applying to be part of this district.
Through the chair, that's correct. And the other purpose of the agricultural district is to, agriculture is a permitted use, giving the zoning designation for both parcels. But the key is whether or not the town in the future or over time decides it wants to promulgate additional rules and regulations that may restrict or limit the use of the parcels in an agricultural use. Under the state law, it would that's where the protection would be coming from, is that the nature of agriculture, the sound agricultural practices, the guidance opinions as it relates to agriculture would kick in. So there are concerns at the local level, not just in the town of Chile, but several towns, that over time zoning will be changed, or there'll be particular other ordinances that may change the nature of agriculture or the definition of agriculture and effectively restrict or prohibit a farmer being able to work that parcel.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the answers and the time today, Mr. Chairman. I intend to vote for this referral today, but I would like to get the additional information from the application and from Mr. King's assessment to the board. But I do appreciate the follow-up on this issue. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the committee? There being no further business, the July 25th, 2011 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee stands adjourned. The next meeting of this committee will be on Monday, August 22nd, 2011 at 4:30 p.m.